A man kneels beside a helpless lion cub, its faint whimper barely audible over the dry wind. His heart pounds as he glances up to see the pride emerging from the tall grass, eyes fixed on him. The air grows heavier with every step the lions take, their presence pressing in from all sides. He feels the weight of the moment, one that demands courage and quick thinking, the kind of resolve echoed throughout Africa's long history of resilience.
What happens next will challenge everything you thought about predators. The man's decision sets the stage for a confrontation where compassion and instinct collide. It began as a solitary walk through the late afternoon savannah, the sun casting long shadows over the golden grass. The man moved with quiet purpose, alert to the subtle signals of the wilderness. But what brought him to a halt wasn't the distant roar of a lion or the shifting grass. It was a fragile, urgent cry, a sound that cut through the breeze, impossible to ignore. He followed the sound and found a young lion cub wedged between rocks, trembling and helpless. The cub's thin body was coated in dust, and one leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Its shallow breaths and wide, darting eyes revealed its fear. Up close, the animal was not the fierce predator of legend, but a vulnerable creature, small and exposed. The man hesitated, fully aware that intervening would mean crossing a line that few dared to approach. He understood the risks. Interfering with a wild animal could have consequences he couldn't predict. He scanned the area, searching for any sign of movement. The silence of the savannah seemed to press in, broken only by the cub's faint whimpers. If he left the cub, it would likely not survive the night. Its injury was serious, and predators wouldn't hesitate to take advantage. The man's mind raced with questions about what he should do, but one thought kept repeating. Stepping in could draw the ire of the pride, and lions are known to be fiercely protective of their young. Lions can travel more than 20 miles in a single day in search of prey, and their protective instincts are well documented. The possibility that the pride was nearby made the decision even more fraught. If the cub's pride was nearby, he knew the consequences could be fatal. Still, the cub's condition left him with little choice. Compassion outweighed caution, even as he felt the weight of unseen eyes on him. He knelt beside the cub, careful not to startle it further. The animal flinched at his touch, its small frame rigid with fear. The injury was severe, its legs swollen and twisted, making escape impossible. The cub did not lash out or snarl. It simply watched, uncertain whether this human was a threat or a lifeline. The man's resolve hardened. He couldn't walk away. Gently, he worked to free the cub's leg from the rocks. The process was slow and deliberate, each movement measured to avoid causing more pain. The cub whimpered, but did not struggle. At last, the limb came free, and the animal sagged against him, exhausted but liberated. The man lifted the cub and carried it to a patch of clear ground, setting it down carefully. His relief was short-lived. As he stood to scan the horizon, he felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. At first, it was only a suggestion of movement, a ripple in the grass, a flicker of shadow. Then, unmistakably, forms began to emerge. A dark mane, then another. The outlines of lions materialized, their approach steady and silent. The man's heart hammered in his chest as he realized the pride was drawing near, their focus unwavering. He stood perfectly still, the cub quiet in his arms. The lions advanced with unhurried precision, their bodies low and their eyes fixed on him. The savannah seemed to hold its breath, every detail sharpened by the tension. The man felt exposed, acutely aware of his vulnerability in the presence of these apex predators. Then he saw them, shadows materializing on the horizon. The pride advanced, their movements fluid and purposeful, as if the savannah itself had arranged this encounter. Amber eyes caught the last rays of sun, reflecting a steady focus that landed squarely on the man and the injured cub in his arms. The largest male led, his dark mane shifting with each deliberate step. Lionesses flanked him as if guarding their territory, behavior well documented by researchers who have observed their vigilance at the edges of a pride's domain. Smaller cubs trailed behind, clinging to the safety of adult shadows, their curiosity as sharp as their mother's wariness. Each silent step pressed into the earth, a reminder of who truly owned this ground. The man's muscles tightened, instinct and reason colliding in a single, paralyzing moment. He clung to the cub, feeling the frail body pressed against his chest, the choice between compassion and self-preservation now painfully clear. Every part of him screamed to back away, but fear and responsibility rooted him to the spot. He realized in a single sharp thought that his act of mercy had placed him between the pride and their own, a place where neither instinct nor logic could guarantee safety. He watched as the lions closed the distance. Their approach was not rushed, yet it carried an unspoken certainty. The lionesses' heads stayed low, their golden coats catching the fading light, their eyes never leaving him. The absence of aggression was unsettling, their silence a deliberate calculation rather than a sign of peace. He remembered that prides are territorial, that lionesses are the primary hunters and fiercely protective of their young, a fact that now pressed on him with new urgency. Interference from an outsider was rarely tolerated, and the stakes could not be clearer. Despite this, the pride's behavior was layered with ambiguity. The male's gaze was unwavering, but he did not advance recklessly. The lionesses moved in coordinated silence, their proximity tightening the circle around the man. He felt their presence as much as he saw it, a slow, predatory choreography with him at the center. The cub in his arms remained utterly still, its earlier fear replaced by a heavy resignation. He tried to focus on details, searching for any sign of what might come next. The pride's formation was precise, a wide arc that closed around him without haste. The lead lioness veered slightly, pausing to lift her nose and test the air. The gesture was brief but deliberate, and the man's heart thudded in response, the tension in his chest rising with each measured breath she took. The massive male halted a few paces behind her, his eyes narrowing, deepening the suspense. The lions did not rush, nor did they retreat. Their proximity was suffocating, their attention absolute. For a moment, the man's mind flashed through every possible outcome. Escape was not an option. The pride's angles left no opening, and any sudden movement would only provoke a reaction. He stood rigid, every muscle drawn tight, not out of courage, but out of an ancient, involuntary reflex. He was forced to exist within the reality of their presence, exposed and powerless beneath the weight of their scrutiny. The lion's stillness was almost as unnerving as their approach. Each shift of muscle, each flick of a tail, seemed loaded with intent. The lead lioness's nose dipped again, catching the scent of the cub, and returned to meet the man's gaze. He felt the full pressure of their attention, the air between them dense with anticipation. The pride had stopped, forming a half circle that left him and the cub at the center of their focus. The silence pressed in, thick and unbroken, as the man waited for the pride to make their move. A subtle shift passed through the pride as the man stood at the center, the injured cub still pressed against his chest. The lion's eyes tracked every move, but their bodies remained poised, not aggressive. One lioness, her coat dusted with sunlight, stepped forward, closing the gap with a quiet confidence that made the man's breath catch. She lowered her head, nostrils flaring as she inhaled the scent of both cub and human. A second lioness joined her, mirroring the first's movements, their focus unwavering. The man's arms tightened around the cub, unsure if he should hold on or let go. Then came a sound more intimate than a growl, a low, vibrating rumble from the lioness, so soft it seemed meant only for the cub. The moment hung between them, the rumble acting as a turning point. The cub, sensing something familiar, shifted slightly in the man's hold. The lioness's ears flicked in response, and she inched closer, her nose nearly touching the cub's fur. The second lioness waited, her gaze fixed on the small creature. The pride's attention converged on this single silent exchange. The man, still rooted in place, watched as the lionesses leaned in. Their approach was calm, deliberate. They sniffed the cub, then paused, reading cues that only they could fully understand. The cub trembled but did not cry out, its body taut with uncertainty. The lionesses did not bare their teeth or issue warning snarls. Instead, their posture communicated something more complex, a careful assessment, a silent negotiation of trust. The rest of the pride maintained their positions, forming a loose semicircle that held the man and cub at its heart. The cubs padded forward in curious stillness, their movements tentative as they watched the lionesses interact with the newcomer. The man's mind raced, but he forced himself to move slowly, lowering the injured cub to the ground. Every muscle in his body remained tense, aware that any sudden movement could shift the mood in an instant. As the cub touched the earth, one lioness stepped in, extending her nose to the cub's side. She nudged it gently, her breath stirring the dust. The injured cub let out a faint, uncertain sound. The lioness responded by licking the cub with slow, careful strokes, her tongue rough but her manner unmistakably gentle. The second lioness watched, then sat back on her haunches as if waiting for the first to finish her inspection. The pride's demeanor softened. The lions' bodies relaxed, and their eyes lost some of their earlier sharpness. The lioness's acceptance of the cub was clear, and the man felt the tension in his own body begin to ebb. He took a small step back, giving them space. The lionesses continued to nuzzle and groom the cub, their actions deliberate and unhurried. The cub, comforted by their presence, settled into the grass, its breathing slowing. The man's presence seemed to fade into the background as the pride reclaimed their own. The scene before him was striking in its quietness. Two lionesses tending to the cub, the rest of the pride watchful but calm, the injured animal now surrounded by its kin. The man remained a witness, his role shifting from rescuer to silent observer. In that moment, the boundaries between human and wild seemed less defined. The pride's reaction was not what instinct or expectation would predict. Instead of aggression, there was a measured acceptance, a willingness to reclaim the cub without retribution. The lioness's gentle care stood in stark contrast to the tension that had filled the air only moments before. As the man took another cautious step back, he let the scene imprint itself in his memory. The cub nestled among the pride, the lioness's heads bowed in care, the savanna quiet except for the soft sounds of grooming. This close encounter left him with questions about the nature of connection, questions that lingered long after he retreated to a safe distance. The bond between humans and wildlife is often misunderstood, shaped by stories of conflict or fear. Yet what happened between the man and the pride on the savanna challenges this narrative. Can a human and a wild predator like a lion truly share a moment of mutual recognition or understanding? The pride's reaction to the man's act of compassion suggests that such a connection, while rare, is possible. Lions are usually seen as dominant and instinct-driven, but this encounter revealed a more nuanced side, one that hints at emotional depth and adaptability in a species often defined by survival. The pride's calmness invites us to reconsider the idea of empathy in wild animals. While it's tempting to project human emotions onto them, research indicates that lions possess a level of social intelligence that shapes their responses. Studies show lions can distinguish human intent based on posture and movement, and their reactions are not always dictated by aggression or fear. In this encounter, the lioness's gentle care for the cub and the pride's collective curiosity toward the man suggest a capacity for complex social behavior. Their body language, neither hostile nor submissive, revealed a willingness to assess rather than attack, a subtle but significant distinction. This moment suggests that, in rare circumstances, wild animals may respond to compassion with curiosity rather than aggression. The man's choice to intervene was a risk, but it resulted in a brief coexistence that defied expectations. It's important to acknowledge that wildlife is unpredictable. Another pride, or a different set of circumstances, might have led to a very different outcome. Still, The delicate balance achieved in this encounter highlights the potential for peaceful interaction when caution and respect guide human actions. Examples of such connections are not confined to isolated incidents. One of the most striking cases occurred in the 1960s when John Rendall and Ace Bork raised a lion cub named Christian. Years after Christian was released into the wild, he recognized his former caretakers and greeted them with unmistakable affection, a moment captured on film and studied for its implications about animal memory and emotional bonds. This story, along with the pride's response on the savannah, broadens our understanding of what lions are capable of when it comes to recognizing and responding to human behavior. While stories like Christians are extraordinary, they are not the only evidence of emotional complexity in lions. Observations in the wild show that lionesses are not only protective mothers, but also attentive to the needs of other pride members, often caring for cubs that are not their own. This social structure relies on trust and cooperation, qualities that may extend, however briefly, to interactions with humans under the right circumstances. The pride's acceptance of the injured cub and their lack of aggression toward the man may reflect this underlying social intelligence. The man's own behavior played a crucial role in shaping the encounter. By staying calm, moving slowly, and avoiding direct threats, he communicated his intentions through nonverbal cues. Research in animal cognition supports the idea that predators like lions can interpret human body language, responding differently to calm versus aggressive postures. The man's restraint may have signaled to the pride that he was not a threat, allowing for a moment of mutual assessment rather than confrontation. Compassion, often seen as a uniquely human trait, can influence wildlife interactions in profound ways. In this case, the man's willingness to help the cub did not go unnoticed by the pride. Instead of reacting with the expected hostility, the lions responded with measured curiosity and ultimately acceptance. This outcome challenges the traditional view of predators as purely instinctual and highlights the importance of trust in human-wildlife encounters. The cub became a bridge, connecting two worlds that rarely meet on peaceful terms. The encounter on the savannah forces us to rethink our assumptions about predators like lions. Their reputation for aggression is balanced by evidence of loyalty, cooperation, and, at times, a capacity to recognize acts of kindness. Whether the pride's response was driven by instinct, social intelligence, or something deeper, it stands as a reminder that these animals are more complex than we often imagine. As we look at this story, it becomes clear that the boundaries between humans and wild animals are not as rigid as they seem. A single act of compassion can open the door to unexpected possibilities, even with the most formidable of creatures. This experience encourages a closer look at how respect, observation, and understanding can shape our relationship with the natural world, setting the stage for deeper lessons about coexistence and mutual respect. This encounter taught one clear lesson: respect and restraint can shift predator response. The man's choice to move slowly, avoid direct eye contact, and present no threat played a crucial role in how the pride reacted. Rather than provoking fear or aggression, his calm presence allowed the lions to assess the situation for themselves. The pride's response was not a random act of tolerance, but a measured reaction to the cues he provided. This is not just a story about a rare moment on the savannah, it's a practical example of how behavior shapes outcomes in the wild. Compassion in nature is never simple. The man's decision to help the injured cub was instinctive, but it came with real risk. He was aware of the potential consequences. Lions are powerful, territorial, and unpredictable. Yet, by choosing to intervene with caution and respect, he created space for an unexpected outcome. The emotional tension of the moment was real, but it was not the only factor at play. The lions, too, were making decisions. guided by their own instincts and social cues. What stands out is the pride's deliberate and intentional response. Their movements were slow, their body language open but guarded. They did not immediately react with aggression, nor did they ignore the man. Instead, they observed, assessed, and ultimately accepted both the cub and the human presence. This suggests that animals, especially social predators like lions, have a capacity for flexible decision making that goes beyond simple instinct. According to lion behavior expert Dr. Craig Packer, lions assess human intent, which likely influenced the pride's calm. This insight is supported by research showing that predators often distinguish between different kinds of human behavior. In areas where people live alongside lions, such as parts of Kenya and Tanzania, community patrols and local guides are trained to use slow movements and neutral postures to signal non-threat. These practical strategies are built on the same principles demonstrated in this encounter. Animals respond to the signals we send, and our actions can either escalate or diffuse tension. Conservation programs around the world have begun to apply these lessons on the ground. In Kenya, for example, local communities are taught how to read animal body language and respond appropriately. By avoiding sudden movements, lowering their profiles, and respecting boundaries, people reduce the risk of negative encounters. These methods not only protect human lives, but also help preserve wildlife by minimizing conflict. The man's experience with the pride is a microcosm of these broader efforts, a reminder that coexistence is possible when both sides are given the chance to communicate. The pride's reaction also challenges the way we think about predators. Lions are often portrayed as symbols of danger, but their social systems are complex. Within a pride, cooperation, trust, and even moments of empathy shape their daily lives. The lionesses' care for the injured cub and their willingness to tolerate the man's presence reveal a side of these animals that is often overlooked. This does not mean lions are safe or predictable, but it does mean they are capable of more nuanced responses than we might expect. For anyone who lives near or visits wildlife areas, the lesson is clear. Next time you're near animals like lions, slow movements and neutral body language signal that you are not a threat. This approach does not guarantee safety, but it increases the chances of a peaceful encounter. It also fosters a kind of mutual respect that is essential for long-term coexistence. The man's restraint and respect were met with the pride's own form of acceptance, showing that the boundaries between humans and wildlife are not fixed, but shaped by every interaction. In the end, the encounter on the savannah is more than an extraordinary story. It is a case study in how careful, respectful behavior can influence even the most powerful animals. The lessons learned here apply not only to lions, but to all wildlife. When we approach the natural world with patience and awareness, we open the door to new possibilities, moments where fear gives way to understanding and conflict gives way to coexistence. As we reflect on the man's experience with the pride, it becomes clear that these moments are not just about survival. They are about the intricate balance that exists between humans and the wild, and the potential for connection that lies within every encounter. The pride's response offered more than a moment of safety. It showed how thoughtful actions can change the course of a wildlife encounter. By saving the cub, the man stepped into their world, and the lion's reaction revealed the complexity of their social bonds. These moments challenge us to act with care and responsibility toward the animals we share space with. You can make a difference by supporting African-led conservation programs and respecting wildlife boundaries. Share your own experiences or thoughts about human-animal encounters in the comments, and subscribe for more stories of African resilience and unexpected moments in the wild. The image of the pride accepting the cub stands as proof that compassion can bridge even the widest divides.